If you're looking to buy the ultimate rally-bred sport compact car, it's pretty hard to ignore the Subaru WRX. This nameplate has been in the US since 2001, and back in 2022, the company introduced the all-new 4th generation, significantly increasing the refinement, the capability, and the technology on the interior. Now, one absence from this generation WRX is the hotter STI version, so for 2025, Subaru is looking to bridge that gap even closer with the introduction of this. This is the 2025 Subaru WRX TS, tuned by STI themselves to give this vehicle even more track capabilities. It's designed to essentially be a replacement for your old WRX STI. So today we're actually out here at Sonoma Raceway because we're going to get this new TS version out on the track and on the street. And the big question I went answered, has Subaru managed to capture the essence of the STI in this WRX TS? Stay tuned to find out. So the TS badge is not new here in America. We've technically seen it on the BRZ since 2018, but this is the first time that we're seeing a WRX with the TS badge. And as you guys know, TS stands for Tuned by STI. So let's go ahead and start by what's going on underneath the hood. Now underneath here, you're gonna find a pretty familiar powertrain. This is the company's 2.4 liter boxer gasoline direct injection turbocharged flat 4-cylinder engine. It is essentially unchanged versus the normal version of the WRX. So it still makes 271 horsepower, 258 pound-feet of torque. It only has around 3 more horsepower versus the old 2-liter boxer flat 4. The torque output also stays the same. Maximum boost pressure for this engine is 12 psi. It all goes out through a one choice only for this trim level, a 6-speed manual transmission, of course, with a limited slip center diff. And Subaru wasn't ready to quite talk about the final fuel economy ratings for this engine with this trim level just yet. The current, or the old model, any other trims essentially is rated at 19 in the city, 26 on the highway. That's on premium fuel. You have a 16.6 gallon fuel tank. I would estimate the fuel economy when they have the final numbers should be pretty similar to that. I also would estimate it have around 350-ish miles of range on a full tank. Now Subaru doesn't quote a 0 to 60 time. We'll try it out when we get the vehicle out on the road. I would estimate it also will be right around the 6-second mark. That's what we got in our previous test. Top speed should be around 150 miles an hour. And the TS version weighs roughly the same as a lot of WRX versions compared to the TR, which effectively this model replaces. It actually weighs a little bit more at just over 3,400 pounds. But let's go ahead and close up this hood here and talk about the exterior styling changes, which they are very minor, but I have to say, when Subaru first revealed the all-new 4th generation WRX, I wasn't the biggest fan of the styling, but since then, it's been on the market for a few years, it's actually grown on me. You can see this is the color that most people tend to buy the WRX in. It's called WR Blue, or World Rally Blue Pearl. It certainly looks really great with the metallic sparkles in it, that massive functional hood scoop at the hood that basically reminds you have something special. You have the standard Subaru hexagonal front fascia with that grille that's gloss black. You can see there's a new red accented WRX logo. That's actually new for 2025. A lot of the other trims will also get that feature as well. And then you can see the headlights. These are the updated Hawkeye style headlights with the LED daytime running light, LED turn signal. These are also steering adaptive headlights. They're full LEDs. And you also get these LED fog lights if you guys go for the premium trim and up. You can see down here at the lower fascia, all that cladding is still here, but I have to say the cladding on the front end I think is grown on me, and it's actually looking quite tasteful. But if you guys choose like a white color, for example, I think it's a little bit too much. On the World Rally Blue, I think it's a nice little contrast. There's also a new Galaxy Purple Pearl. That's a really dark purple color. That's a new color for 2025. It's available on all trims of the WRX. If you want the TS, Subaru says you can get basically all the colors available on this trim. It also only comes with one interior color. Now moving around the side profile, this is built off of the same Subaru global architecture, which basically just got some enhancements when the all-new 4th generation came out. Subaru's WRX essentially was only called a WRX when the generation was introduced back in 2015. So this is, some of you may call it a very heavy refresh, even though it is a new generation. Looking at the side profile, you can still only get it as a sedan here in America. It has a 105-inch long wheelbase with a 183.8-inch overall length. So again, it is a good like 3 inches longer versus the previous generation. But you can see when you guys go for the TS version, you get these unique wheels. Now these wheels essentially came off of the old TR model. Remember, we were out in Italy last year, at the end of last year, driving the TR. That was a 1-year special, which stood for tuner ready. The TS essentially takes us to the next level. So you have 19-inch wheels. This is the only trim of the WRX for 2025 to get 19-inch wheels. They kind of have like this matte gray finish. It's a multi-spoke design. And you also have these really fat 245 by 35 R19 Bridgestone Potenza S007 tires. So it's a summer tire that's still very streetable. Subaru actually claims this tire has more grip versus the wheel and tire package on the old WRX STI from like 2018 to 2021. The brakes are also the same brakes as that STI from back then. It's a 13.4 inch cross-drilled rotor at the front, 12.8 inch cross-drilled rotor at the back. You have these massive Brembo 6-piston gold painted calipers. So compared to the TR, which had red painted calipers, these are gold painted, which I think actually looks really tasteful. You can see you have additional cladding over here along the actual side wheel arches of the vehicle going over to the side sill. The suspension also has been upgraded in this vehicle. It's got the adaptive suspension from the GT. However, the dampers have been tuned by STI along with the steering setup. So we'll talk about that later on in the driving scene. Subaru says this is the most track capable version of the WRX because again it has an even stiffer setup versus the TR and versus the GT, but you still have the ability to adjust the suspension from comfort all the way up to the Sport Plus setting, which we'll talk about later. Now a couple of other unique styling elements. The mirrors, you can see they are crystal black silica painted, so this is unique to the TS trim. They are not power folding, but you do have an integrated turn signal. No 360 camera. Subaru doesn't offer that on the or any WRX. You can see the side window trim is also black, but it's a flat black design. Subaru also deletes the sunroof on this trim. They decided to do that for weight savings to also give you more headroom inside the vehicle. If you guys plan to track it and use a helmet, you cannot add a sunroof back, so buy a GT or buy a limited trim if you guys want the sunroof. You can see the shark fin antenna is also crystal black silica painted. It's a subtle touch, and keep in mind if you guys get black, you're not going to see those, contrasting black elements. And then looking at the rear of the vehicle, you can see styling is pretty much the same. This is kind of the area where when I first saw it, it was very controversial. I do like the taillights. You can see they kind of have like this liquid magma look to them with the way the LED taillight light signature looks like. The brake lights are LEDs. The turn signal, as you can see, is just incandescent. The reverse light, however, is LEDs. There's also more crystal black silica here for the rear spoiler, which is a low profile design. I would have loved to see Subaru put a big high wing spoiler. You can go to the aftermarket to add that if you guys want that STI look. You can see that black badging here continues with the red badging here for WRX and TS, which is kind of a nice little touch. Some of you may even debadge it or put a fake STI badge with the big wing. I could see a lot of people doing that. What I don't like, however, is this rear bumper. You can see the rear bumper is continued to be unpainted. Now, if you go for a black car, it makes it less noticeable. I would say white looks the worst, but here on this World Rally Blue, it's fine. I mean, I've seen people, paint that rear bumper in the aftermarket, and I think it looks a lot better. So again, it's a Subaru. You're supposed to be able to take this thing into, I guess, grassy, off-roady, dirt road conditions, which is kind of nice. You can see the quad exhaust here is a signature design trait. It's not a tuned exhaust. It's basically the same exhaust from every other WRX. And I have to say it's a little bit too quiet for me. So you're gonna have to go to the aftermarket if you wanna make it a little bit louder. Your backup camera obviously is back here, and as you can see, there's also no rear parking sensors, but there is a little button back here where you can open up the trunk area, and you can see this is a conventional trunk vehicle, so you have around 12.5 cubic feet of storage space. There are hinges that do intrude a little bit into the cargo area, but there's a little cutout for them. You can see the seats do fold down in a 60/40 manner, which is nice. But for those of you who have a hatchback, you're gonna wish Subaru would offer a hatchback. Underneath here, you can see there is no spare tire. There's just a fix-a-flat kit with an air compressor. So it's a little bit disappointing how you don't get that feature. But overall, it's still a relatively usable trunk area. But for those of you who have a hatch, that's kind of where Subaru has dropped the ball. They still refuse to offer a hatch here in America. So now that we talked about the exterior of the TS version, which was pretty restrained, the interior also has some pretty light changes to it. The big difference you're going to notice right away are these seats. Now, these seats are pretty similar to the seats that you find in the GT and the old TR model. However, as you can see, there's a big bright red WRX TS badge embroidered onto the actual head restraints. These are also Recaro bucket seats, which, by the way, this Alcantara with the blue leather accents looks really good. However, if you guys don't like blue, this is essentially the same World Rally Blue color as the exterior. Subaru only offers this interior color, so you can go crazy if you guys go for the red exterior, and you can also have a blue interior. So that's something that's very, very bold. Now, getting inside the vehicle, you can see the WRX has a little over 5 inches of ground clearance, so it has a nice low, typical sedan step-in height. As I shut the door, The door has a pretty solid sounding thunk. Remember, this is still built on the Subaru Global architecture that they introduced a few years ago. Now, here's the key fob for the vehicle. You can see all WRX models actually come standard with their intelligent access key. It has the usual buttons here for lock, unlock, power open for the trunk, or pop open for the trunk, and then a panic feature. Subaru still does not offer a phone as a key function, so that's something that I'm hoping the company will eventually add. Now, when you want to start the vehicle up, this trim only comes with a lovely 6-speed manual transmission. It's got these metal accented pedals. There's also a red start-stop button here with an STI badge to kind of let you know you have something a little bit more special. Push that, and you can see the vehicle will start right up for you. It has that typical Subaru snarl where it kind of instantly reminds you it's a boxer engine, although it settles into a relatively refined idle, but you can hear it has the typical snarls that you associate with a boxer engine, but I really would have liked it if Subaru would have made the engine a little bit louder, add some pops and crackles, but you can easily add that through the aftermarket if you are so inclined to do so. Now, in terms of the materials, let's talk about the door panels here. You can see the upper door panel hasn't really changed. It's a soft touch injection molded plastic. There's some faux carbon fiber trim, some chrome accented door handles. More of that blue leather and the ultra suede carries over onto the dash or the door panel here. We can see the ultra suede and the blue leather, which is nice. This is nice and padded. Love this big little area where you can grab this to close the door or put a smartphone here. Window controls, they are one touch for all four, and they're also illuminated. They have a nice high quality feel to them, which is great. Down here at the lower portion, it is hard touch plastic with some additional storage. There's also the upgraded Harman Kardon stereo, which offers 11 speakers and just under 600 watts of power. It sounds pretty good if you guys are also an audiophile, so kind of keep that in mind. The steering wheel, as you can see, it basically looks the same aside from the blue stitching, but really the big change on this interior is going to be in that display over there. So that display is actually the first fully digital cluster that you can get in the WRX model. It's only exclusive to this trim level here. It's a 12.3-inch cluster. It is customizable. You can see it actually shows you all your usual information. I actually have it on the driver assist display right now. You can change the way that display looks over here by pushing and holding this little button right here. So there's a center button here. When you push and hold that, it does cycle through the different displays. So if I push and hold it, it'll go to the traditional 2-dial display. It'll go to an all map display, of course, and it also will go to the driver assistance display again. So it's a kind of a nice little system here, which kind of shows you the customizability that Subaru can do. And we've been waiting for the company to do an all digital display, so it's just really nice to find. I also really love the fact that it has a traditional 2-dial look, and that's kind of what most people are going to want it in, and it also looks like a traditional system. So that's something that Subaru, again, finally added with this new TS version. Now, in terms of the rest of the dash material, you can see the upper portion here over the hood is a hard touch injection molded plastic. It's also hard touch here, but this area here is slightly padded. You have more of the ultra suede with the contrast blue stitching and the real leather that's covering this area here, although not this area, just up until here. More leather along the center console, which you can see it's also blue, which is kind of cool with the blue accented stitching. The 11.6-inch touchscreen, this is part of the latest Subaru Starlink infotainment system. It has wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. You can see this is Rob's phone connected to the system, and I have to say the software behind it still needs work. First of all, the screen, it's relatively bright, but it has a ton of glare from the bright sunlight, which I find annoying. It's, again, a portrait style screen. We've just seen this screen before on so many other Subaru products. You can also kind of adjust the upper portion here and change the way that looks. The CarPlay screen, as you can see, looks fine, but it's just a little bit laggy and slow, especially when you go back to the native system. The embedded GPS is like a TomTom navigation, which literally looks like it belongs on a vehicle from 15 years ago. I just think it's time for Subaru to give us an entirely new native system. You can see down here at this lower area, you've got your dual zone climate control function, which you can pull up and bring up a fuller screen of the climate. Your heated seat controls are now located in the screen, which is kind of nice. Subaru used to do this actual switch here down by the center console, but they wanted to be more modern. If you're looking for ventilated seats, still not available in this vehicle. When I put the car into reverse, you can see reverse is accessed by pulling up on that ring and going down to the right. There's your backup camera. It has trajectory, distance markers, but no parking sensors and no 360 camera. So that's something that some competitors certainly do offer, which would have been nice. The manual transmission in this vehicle, I actually really like. The company, I feel like, has made some improvements. It has really nice precision through the gates. It also doesn't mind being hurried as much. 6th gear, as you can see, is right there. And I have to say, it feels pretty similar to the last Mazda or maybe even the last Honda that I've driven. So the company's made some improvements here. The clutch also has medium heft to it. It engages right at the middle point of the travel, so it's good for those of you who are not really used to driving stick. The rest of the center console here, you can see this area here is not quite large enough to fit an iPhone 14 Pro Max without it sitting down on the actual like sitting on the actual floor. You have to kind of put it to the side. So this area could be larger. There's no wireless phone charging pad. You have 2 USB charging ports, an A and a C. Down here you can see you've got your cup holders, a little bit of a storage area. This is where the heated seat used to go, so now Subaru gave us a little area where you can put your key. You've got a traditional manual pull style handbrake, which is kind of nice. And then this center console, as you can see, is blue, which I actually think the blue is a little much. Rob kind of agreed with me when he saw it. I think this would be better being black instead, but the center console is a nice padded lid. I just wish it adjusted to kind of move forward a little bit more. And when I'm sitting here, it's not quite high enough to where my elbow is hitting it to give me comfort. You can see, open that up. It's a relatively decent size. There's a 12-volt power outlet in there, so that's fine. But again, they just need to make this lid adjustable so it gives you a little bit more height, so you can actually use this as an armrest. I mentioned earlier these seats, which as you can see, getting a closer look, they look fantastic. They hold you in place really nicely from these aggressive bolsters, but I also find the seats to be still comfortable even on longer drives, which is great. The Alcantara also holds you in place nicely. You can see the glove compartment, open this up. It's actually a pretty big glove compartment. It's damped, but not lined with felt. It's a bin style. So storage is actually pretty good in this vehicle. The one thing it just lacks is a sunroof. Now without a sunroof, you can see it has pretty good headroom space, which is why Subaru deleted it. But I do think they need to offer the option for a sunroof. I don't like the fact that it has incandescent bulbs for the map lights. There's also not much in terms of ambient lighting in this vehicle. So it's certainly not luxurious, but it definitely feels more special. It feels sporty. It feels like a driver's car, and that digital display I think is a nice touch for sure. But let's go ahead and hop into the backseat area and remind you guys what the space is like. Now, Subaru tells us that a lot of families with kids actually drive a WRX. This is probably a vehicle for, I guess, dad who doesn't want to give up an enthusiast-oriented vehicle, but still wants the practicality. When I get back here, shut the door, you can see the legroom space is actually pretty good. Subaru says there's 36.5 inches of legroom. There is a pretty big hump here for the center passenger. No heated rear seats, but you do get rear seat USB charging ports, an A and a C. No rear seat vents, which would have been nice, especially if you plan to use this as a family vehicle. You have 2 storage cubbies. I can easily get over here and cross my legs. Headroom space is also pretty decent. The seats themselves actually feel a little bit higher up, which is definitely nice for those of you who want to get more of that stadium style seating. The window control back here is one touch up down, hard touch plastic on this upper portion with more of the fake carbon fiber, chrome accents, nice and padded leather, blue leather here, which is nice. And then if you fold this down here, you can see there's an armrest that gives you 2 cup holders. So overall, if you're comparing this to like the GR Corolla, for example, or a Volkswagen GTI, this does offer more rear seat legroom, but this is also pretty comparable to the last Honda Civic Type R, that I tested. So we've been waiting for Subaru to finally give us a WRX STI, and I'm sad to report this is not a full-blown STI version. However, TS stands for Tuned by STI, in case you guys didn't hear me say that several times earlier in the video, which essentially means this is the first time that we can get a WRX that is equipped with the adaptive suspension from the GT with a manual transmission. However, the actual dampers have been tuned by STI, so it's even sportier, it's even more razor focused. Subaru says this is the most track capable version. In fact, the tires on this vehicle, the tires and the brakes, they have more grip versus the old STI that was in production up until 2020, I believe. Tires are 245 width, Bridgestone Potenza 007 tires, and we have the same 13.4 inch Brembo brakes at the front with the 6-piston monoblock calipers, 12.8 rotors in the back. These are some serious hardware, of course, and that's going to give the TS version, the best handling that you're looking for. The WRX has always been a really wonderfully joyful car to drive in the corners. We're starting off the drive here in normal. Now I'm noticing right away in normal mode, the steering is, while it is quick and precise, it is very light. It's going to feel the same way in comfort as well. The dampers are definitely in their softer setting, but this road, as you can see, just outside of Napa, just north of Napa. I don't remember where you're at exactly, but it's a very narrow road with tons of bumps. Sorry, Rob, in case he gets a little car sick, he's sitting here shotgun with me. But it definitely feels like a very capable car. And that's one of the reasons why the WRX is so popular with enthusiasts, because it is fun to drive. It has the all-wheel drive grip that people are looking for. It has that manual transmission, because remember, Subaru says about 80% of WRX buyers choose the manual. That's because the automatic is a CVT. I'll go ahead and put my glasses back under my sunglasses. But yeah, I mean, this basically feels like it's WRX territory here. Unfortunately, the engine is not changed, which is a good or a bad thing, depending on what your expectations are with this car. So we still have the 2.4 liter turbocharged Boxer flat 6 with 12 PSI of maximum boost pressure, making 271 horsepower. Flat 4, I'm sorry. I said flat 6, I'm thinking Porsche. Making 271 horsepower and 258 pound-feet of torque. The torque figure is a little bit disappointing. I would have loved to see Subaru push the envelope to 300 horsepower, but this is still a very quick car. If we can find a straight road later, we'll try to attempt to do another 0 to 60. That little beep that you heard there is the annoying lane departure alert, which you can turn off, the buzzer. We can finally get a manual transmission with Subaru's EyeSight technology, but let's go ahead and push the drive mode selector button here, and we're gonna go into sport mode here. In sport mode, this puts the dampers in its stiffer setting, although it looks like it actually doesn't by this little gauge display here. The dampers are still normal. The steering is in sport. The powertrain control is in normal. And really what I'm just feeling mostly is just the steering getting heavier in this car, which the steering in this vehicle does surprisingly give you a good amount of feedback. And like I said earlier, the precision is there. It's a very quick steering. The suspension stays, or the chassis feels really flat. It also feels really stiff. It just feels like a driver's car. And that's one of the reasons why people love WRXs so much. Like, you can just find your favorite back road, attack, and go in it with speed and just enjoy the drive. This thing doesn't really feel like you're beating on it and you're abusing it. It just feels like it can take more and more. Now, obviously, it's no Crosstrek WRX. I would love to see Subaru do something like that, but it's still a really joyful vehicle to drive. But let's go ahead and switch it here into Sport Plus. Now, here in Sport Plus, it essentially makes the suspension in its firmest setting. The powertrain control goes into its stiffest setting. I must say the roads on this road that we're on are very, very narrow. You kind of feel the width of this car. It's 72 inches wide, which is not very wide in general, but this is big, especially if you guys are coming from the old WRX hatch. I would love to see Subaru do another hatch, but they always keep saying that nobody bought the hatch here in America, so it's your fault why Subaru doesn't offer the hatchback version. But now we're in Sport Plus setting here. The suspension noticeably gets firmer, steering gets even heavier, and I appreciate the fact that Subaru offers this level of adjustability because, you know, WRXs in general can be a little bit too harsh, especially as a daily driver, and with the adaptive suspension, it's now possible to daily drive this vehicle, and it's surprisingly livable. Now, in this mode, I could still daily drive this, especially if I lived on a back road like this, but I would probably just have it in normal or comfort most of the time, but I don't love the way the steering feels because it's too light. But that's where you can kind of, sorry, Rob. That's where you can kind of go into the individual setting and make the steering heavier while keeping it in the comforts setup. But man, this is some serious back roads here. Subaru really wanted us to test out the handling capabilities of this car. So what a fantastic road. I just wish it wasn't so narrow. I want a little bit more space to kind of explore the limits of this vehicle. Now, with the engine not getting any changes, some may be a little disappointed that Subaru didn't want to give it any more power. I will say that this 2.4-liter engine, it has a pretty nice sound to it, although it's just too quiet. I wanted Subaru to give us more induction noise, more exhaust noise. Now, obviously, you can go to the aftermarket to do so, but I think that that's kind of a missed opportunity for Subaru. I think this powertrain deserves like a little bit more of a sound to it. It still feels very fast though. I mean, this thing has plenty of power and it also has a 6-speed manual transmission, which it's really nice to be driving a manual transmission in almost 2025. The shifter is surprisingly improved. Subaru transmissions have always been a little bit notchy, but this one I've noticed actually slides into the gates with a really nice, almost Honda-like precision to it. The clutch also has a medium heft to it. It also has really good feel, so where you don't feel like you're gonna stall this vehicle. I actually haven't stalled this car out once, and it's been a little bit since I've driven a manual transmission, but the seats also, I wanna mention, these seats are the Recaro buckets from the GT, although they are, I feel like, a little bit more aggressively bolstered. I also love all the blue. If you guys don't like blue, you better not pick this trim because it only comes with a blue interior, but it holds you in place really nicely. And it just pairs beautifully with the chassis of this vehicle because you can just essentially push this car as hard as you want to go. You can explore the limits really easily. The car gives you so much feedback. And aside from the engine that doesn't make much noise, you do hear a little bit of road noise coming in, which is fine. I mean, this car is designed for young people, and you can kind of tell, especially when you're driving it in the Sport Plus setting. Now, in terms of visibility, it's a Subaru. Subarus always have pretty good visibility. I can see out of the front, the side, the rear quite nicely. This car, again, comes with their EyeSight driver assistance tech. I appreciate how thin that A-pillar is. The hood scoop also is a nice view as well to remind you you've got a special Subaru. But yeah, the powertrain itself, not really much in terms of complaints, but it would be nice just for bragging rights if Subaru had made this thing just have 300 horsepower. Obviously, you can go to the aftermarket to get that power figure, but I personally would go with the manual transmission, which is only included when you guys go for this trim. If you guys want an automatic, Subaru will happily sell you the GT trim. So we managed to find a straight road, and I want to do a quick 0 to 60 run. Subaru doesn't claim any numbers. The last time we tested one, I think we got just under 6 seconds. Remember, this is an all-wheel drive vehicle, and you have to do a somewhat of aggressive clutch dump. So it's in Sport Plus. I turned off the traction control, and let's see what we can get here. Eek. 6.14 seconds there. Now, I did do a 5,000 clutch dump, which, sorry, Rob, for all the shakiness, but if you want to do an even more aggressive one, let's see if I can try to get it to not bog as much. I'm sure Rob's going to want to do it again himself later to get a better time. .19 there. So again, I am definitely bogging pretty hard when you first let off the clutch. This is going to require some finesse with the clutch, with the throttle and such. I will say that the shifter has massively improved. Before, I remember the WRX didn't like to be rushed and hurried when you're trying to shift, especially from first to second. So I am very pleased with how this is, Subaru has kind of improved the shift action of the transmission. It just feels like it glides through the gates a lot with a lot more precision. It doesn't mind being hurried. And again, the clutch is also very forgiving. So for those of you who are thinking, you want to use this as a daily or teach someone how to drive a stick, the WRX has definitely gotten much more improved there. And it's kind of almost at the same level as some of the Honda and Toyota and Mazda transmissions that I've driven.
Track's all yours. I'll see you in 2 laps.
2 laps. So here we are back at Sonoma Raceway in Napa, California in the 2025 Subaru WRX TS. Even though this vehicle is not a full-on STI version, Subaru is confident that you're going to notice the big handling improvements to the suspension, to the steering when you have the vehicle out on the track. And basically, the WRX has always been a fantastic vehicle to drive. I've driven on Sonoma Raceway a couple times, and I have to say, for a vehicle that is not an STI, this thing right out of the box is absolutely phenomenal out on these roads. You get a ton of grip from those Bridgestone Potenza S007 tires. And also remember, we have these upgraded Brembo brakes, 6 pistons up front, cross-drilled rotors. Subaru is confident that you can basically hammer all day long on these brakes, and this thing will just eat it up with very little to no brake fade. The steering offers a ton of feedback. I have it in its Sport Plus setting right now. That's the setting you're going to want to be to essentially get the most grip, the most handling, the best feel out of the vehicle. And this thing just corners like it's on rails. There's very little to no body lean. Put your foot down here. This is where I do wish the car had a little more power, because this is kind of a missed opportunity where I think Subaru could have easily added a little bit more power to give this thing the power of an STI. I mean, 300 horsepower would have been nice at least, but put my foot down there. This thing just, a little bit of understeer there, but it just grips and keeps going and pulls hard. Now, I'm not like an amazing track driver. I have some experience, but it's shocking to me how just right out of the box, this thing just is so agile. It's so confidence inspiring. The one thing I do wish is the transmission gearing's not the best, and I also think that Subaru needs to consider adding a rev match feature. An active rev match would be nice. A little bit of understeer there. I went a little too hot into that corner, but man, this thing is just absolutely insane. I also do want a little more sound. This thing is just too quiet. I can literally barely hear the engine over the helmet and me talking and everything. But that's something you can easily fix with the aftermarket, obviously. Understeer there, but it's still continuing to grip. Woo-hoo-hoo, this thing is fun. Just needs a little more power on the top end so you can actually get this thing to accelerate a little harder. But man, what an absolutely phenomenal car. So for those of you who want to do some track driving, you're gonna find plenty to like with the TS just right out of the box, right out of the factory showroom floor, and that's because this thing just has way more grip versus the regular version of the WRX. So one of the things that really surprised me with the WRX is just how successful it's been for Subaru, especially if you guys are looking for the sport compact type of vehicle, because I mean, in this space, you've got the WRX, you've got the Civic Si and Type R, you've got the Volkswagen GTI and Golf R, you've got the new GR Corolla, you've got the Elantra N. There's a lot of choices out there, but this vehicle here is actually the best-selling model here in the States. Subaru managed to sell just under 25,000 units. 25,000 units in a car that is a manual transmission, that's a sedan, it's all-wheel drive. The manual transmission take rate is also over 80%. So this vehicle essentially proves that enthusiasts are still alive and well, and they are buying brand new cars because otherwise Subaru wouldn't continue to keep building it. And after spending the day driving the hottest version of the WRX, even though it's not quite a WRX STI, the TS model certainly gets you pretty darn close. As you guys saw out on the road, it is definitely the best handling vehicle out there, yet it also can deliver a surprisingly good ride quality when you have the dampers set into their comfort setting. The manual transmission, Subaru has made some nice improvements to it, where it just has a much more snickety-snick feel. It doesn't mind being rushed through the gates, which was kind of a problem with a lot of the older Subaru manual transmissions that I've driven before. The 2.4-liter engine is just too quiet. This is where I think the aftermarket's going to come into place. They're going to give it a louder exhaust system, more induction howl, more boost sounds, or more boost pressure would be nice, and a kind of like that blow-off valve would be good to kind of hear those whooshes. It would kind of make this thing feel even more visceral, and I think that's where there's a missed opportunity, where it also keeps it from being a full-on STI, because again, it's just a TS, but it did deliver solid acceleration. As you guys saw, 0 to 60 in 6.19 seconds. By the way, off camera, Rob was able to get 6.09 seconds, so he was only 0.1 second faster than me, doing a slightly less aggressive 4,000 clutch dump. So it's still relatively quick, but again, the aftermarket will make this thing even quicker, because the quickest time I got was from a GR Corolla, which did it in 4.9 seconds. So there's certainly room for improvement. The interior is definitely also still a nice place to spend time. I like the Recaro seats, the infotainment system, the software is still not my favorite, but I do like that all-digital 12.3-inch display. It's about time that Subaru offered it, and for now, that digital display is only included on the TS models, to kind of keep that in mind. I mean, overall, this is still a really attractive vehicle, so I think that it's going to do well. I just think that Subaru is kind of strange with, you know, the introduction of this car, because the TR model essentially was only offered for 1 year, and then now the TS is replacing it, and probably you guys are wondering, where does this sit in the lineup? And that's kind of where Subaru was saying, if you're looking at the lineup for the WRX, there's several different trims to choose from. The GT has always been at the very top. The TR was below it. So this car, however, Subaru says is kind of at the same level as the GT, because remember, it has the adaptive dampers, it has the Recaro seats, it just comes with a manual transmission. They weren't ready to talk about final pricing as of this filming. However, a base WRX starts at around $32,700. Most of you are going to probably step it up to a premium or a limited trim for just under 40 grand for the limited trim. The TR was around $42,000. A GT is around $44,700. I would estimate when this car gets final pricing, it'll probably be either $43,000 to $45,000. It'll be in that price range, which again is a hefty price premium over something like a limited trim. It's probably going to be about $5,000 more. As an enthusiast, you probably might be thinking, I'll just buy a base version and replace the suspension myself and do all the mods yourself, which is also an option. But if you're looking for, again, the ultimate factory bred WRX that gets pretty darn close to an STI, I'd say that Subaru has captured some of the essence of that model, but they are just shy of it because it's got an engine that didn't get any more power, and it also needs a little bit more sound, which can be easily fixed with the aftermarket. But with all that said, hope you guys have enjoyed my full overview on the brand new 2025 Subaru WRX TS, I'm sorry. If you're also looking to see the latest cars I'm testing, be sure to follow me on Instagram at redline_reviews. Like us on Facebook, and as always, guys, please keep subscribing to the Redline Reviews YouTube channel for all the latest reviews. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next video.